Unfortunately, marketing alone cannot make a product a success or a solution a success. When you're dealing with data, it's not just the what and then you move on. It's understanding the why things are happening, because there's no such thing as bad data.
I think there's something there for maybe younger marketers who they have a ton of different data coming in. You can't just look at it blindly and say, okay, this is right, this is right.
I also think that's why the AI is maybe a little bit slower, or technology development is a bit slower in the healthcare space, because we do have to keep that in mind, all of the security and safety aspects of making sure you're using the data appropriately or protecting the data appropriately.
Welcome to What Keeps Marketers Up at Night, the show where we unpack what's keeping modern CMOs, growth leads, and marketing ops folks awake, and occasionally make them laugh about it. I'm Jeff Spinella from Darwin, where we help teams turn marketing chaos into reliable systems that actually work. Today, I'm joined by Alicia Burns, Director of Product Marketing at TriMedics. Alicia is a product marketing leader with over 15 years of marketing experience in medical device and healthcare technology. She has extensive experience performing market and industry research, leading cross-functional product development teams, executing strategic launch plans, and supporting global sales and revenue functions. Welcome to the show, Alicia.
Thanks, Jeff. Glad to be here. Thanks for including me in this opportunity.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm very excited to chat, to pick your brain on a lot of things. So thank you for joining. So I wanted to start here, as we always do with folks. Why don't you fill in a few gaps there? I'm sure my intro on you was certainly not covering your entire career and your full background. Why don't you share a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the director over the product marketing organization at TriMedics, like Jeff said. And we are responsible for the entire solution portfolio and working alongside our product management and IT counterparts to make sure we're commercializing, marketing, making sure the products we're bringing to market are successful long-term, and really solve issues for our clients. And I have been, like you said, in healthcare my entire career, which is really funny because I actually don't have any background in healthcare. It's all been on the job. I thought I was going to work admin style in an ad agency once I got out of college, and really fell in love when I got an internship at a sports medicine company and realized that there was a whole side to marketing in the healthcare space. And you're able to work on products that truly change people's lives. And, I can be involved in something truly innovative and impactful, even if I don't have that background, just being part of that team of innovation.
Absolutely. And you were the first person I've spoken to ever on this podcast, and certainly in a long time in that field. It's very unique, and the life-saving work that you all do, or at least life-enhancing work. I want to start here, though, with I really am excited to learn more about that too, specifically if we can get into that, this industry, because it is unique from a lot of the folks we talk to. But before we do that, I want to go down the line here of the name of our show. And I'm curious, what is keeping you up at night this week from a marketing perspective?
Yes, lots to keep me up at night this week. We are quickly approaching end of the year. It's the holidays. This is the last real working week, we should say, of the year before everybody starts to take off. And it's just finding that balance of families coming in town, you do your Christmas shopping with, we need to make sure we execute on all the goals. We got to wrap up our projects on time. And our sales team is still trying to close deals up until, midnight on the last day of the month, and making sure they have what they need so that we can be successful. So it is a tight balance, and actually tends to be one of the busiest parts of the year, work-wise for us.
I was going to say, yeah, you would think that things slow down for a lot of folks around this time of year. End of year is when the budgets, need to be finished for next year, or need to be wrapped up or spent, whatever it may be for this year. You're trying to get the as many numbers as you can that are positive to report. I can have at least a little bit of time to maybe enjoy the holiday season next week. Or you're going to be working? Yeah, okay.
Working a little bit, trying to do half days. We're also in the middle of trying to convert our clients over on a technology platform. So just managing expectations, communications, that we have to get it done by the end of the year. And it's like, no matter how well you plan these either communications campaigns, operational plans, it's anything that can go wrong will, right? Murphy's Law. And it's never enough communication. We always miss people, even if you try to do multi-channel comms. it's just trying to make sure you get the word out.
Be curious to hear that when you mentioned that you're missing folks and the multi-channel columns. Is that a function of just this time of year? You think some people are paying more attention or not or less? Yeah.
I think it is a function of this time of year. Unfortunately, it's something we just have to do from a technical standpoint to get done by the end of the year. It's holidays. Everybody's busy. Some people will take the entire, month or half month off. So we may be missing them, but it's also the way people like to be communicated to. It's not always email. And the number of times you have to repeat something, right? We are just a drop in the bucket for what our clients deal with. We are one vendor of hundreds that they probably interact with. And we have to reach them multiple times. So we have to reach them email. We have to reach them through one-on-one messages. I mean, we've done direct email campaigns. And we still miss people.
Interesting. That's very interesting thing to look at, because certainly if you're in marketing, let's say, it's such a broad term to say that you're in marketing. But there's so many different sizes of companies, types of companies. You're mentioning one that, similar to you, Darwin, where we work. We are a vendor, right? If we must use the most basic term, we like to say we're a partner, and I'm sure you feel the same way about those you work with. But there are other priorities and things like that that people are always facing against, and maybe we're not the highest priority. I'm curious. You mentioned the challenges there of getting a hold of people. Is this something that is measured as part of outreach in some way? That this is a statistical metric that your team looks at for getting in touch with people or speaking to people, or is this more informal, just trying to get messages across and you don't necessarily measure it? I'm curious how that works, because it sounds like you're doing marketing, but it's also just personal conversation, communication mixed in.
Yeah, and I'll say in the role in industry, I'm in B2B, but it's healthcare, so it's a high touch industry in general for both our clients and the patient side of things. So we certainly do follow best industry practices and follow, if we're going to do an email campaign, we're looking at how clean are the distribution lists when we put them in our marketing automation platform, making sure we go back and clean that up, making sure, we're tracking open rates, click-through rates, time on page. But again, that's of those that we reach. And it should also be supplemented by our one-on-one. So we have a client experience or client success team that maintains ongoing relationships with our clients. And we will have, in this instance of the technology platform, super users or the users or partners at the client that we've identified as influential. They're our main point of contact. So doing the mass marketing, but also supplementing it with the one-on-one outreach from our client experience team. And that's a little bit harder to measure than making sure they do the outreach. But I think that's what would create the best experience in this, with the expectations. It's a high touch environment.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So, a lot of different channels here, a lot of different measuring. Some you can get better than others. We know this has always been a challenge for marketers, making sure we have the right attribution, the right metrics. How can we connect this to the bottom line one way or another? I'm curious, and maybe you can't speak to it, but you mentioned using a system or tool that you have for outreach. If you're able to share what that is, great. If not, I'd be curious, even if not, we're talking now about technology, the intersection of technology and marketing. What sort of challenges, because this is everybody has to work with technology if you're marketing, and something you might not think about earlier days. What sort of challenges do you face from a technology perspective, if any, in using a tool like that, and that maybe it doesn't give or does give, or it doesn't give you exactly what you want, or there's a lot of work around customization? I'm curious what sort of challenges you face with that tool.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest challenge that I run into is the tools usually work, right, as intended to solve the solution, whatever your need is. It's the integration of the tools with each other and the integration of data. For the CRM, I think, is the foundation of marketing for an organization, and also where our client experience team should be documenting all those interactions as well. So you get a true view of what the client is experiencing from our side, from their side, what's influencing them, all the different touch points we have, but then making sure, your emails are being pulled into that, click-through rates, all the actions that they're taking. If you're doing surveys, if you're doing NPS scores, that all that is integrated into one ecosystem. I find that quite the challenge when we bring on new technology platforms.
Absolutely. And we hear that all the time because this is a little bit more of what we do at Darwin. Managing integrations, obviously any marketing team, in my opinion, that's of a sizable organization really knows what they're doing. They're going to use a lot of different integrations and different tools. How do you bring those all together? How do you make sure that you can get the right metrics, the right data that you need to tell the story of how great marketing is doing and how important they are to the organization? Now that we're talking a little bit about technology, I want to go even to the next step, I should say, of technology, which is, of course, AI. It's unavoidable in 2025, and certainly the previous couple of years as well. I'm curious, again, to the extent that you're able to, and I know that you might not be able to get too detailed in this, but within your organization or even just personally, what AI tools do you use to make your job easier?
Yeah, I mean, I probably, along with many, I mainly use conversational analytics, right? A lot of times I can be quite verbose, as you'll see as we go throughout this podcast. It's slimming, content down. I have a lot I want to say. How do I say it in a succinct way? Or maybe I'm trying to get a specific tone to it. So using these conversational analytics tools, ChatGPT, Copilot, to help curate, and finesse the message. And also sometimes I'm in meetings all day. I have to get a content piece done, whether it's key messaging for emails or for sales training. I'll throw a couple of bullets in because I just don't have enough time to sit down and really think out what I want to say and have it draft up something for me to get started. And then I, go and then use that to curate the content later. It's just really a time saver. And I'll say in our organization, the other area we're really working at developing our own AI tools and our own agents is because with AI, it learns from the content you're putting into it, right? We have a lot of proprietary data that we don't want to expose to, an open platform. So we are working on developing our own agents on our own database, and we will be using that to support marketing claims, to analyze our product performance, our client performance. It's data we have today, but it's very manual to pull and to validate. And at the end of the day, it'll just make it much stronger from a value proposition standpoint, from product positioning, from competitive comparisons, and making sure we're actually achieving and executing on what we say we're going to do for our clients.
Yeah, very interesting piece. You hear a little bit more about that more than maybe you did a year ago, and that folks are just bringing things internal, right? They're creating their own LLMs, dumping everything in there, trying to train it over time. Very interesting to hear that. I'm curious as well, just knowing the industry you're in. I imagine there are a lot of regulations around personal information, just devices, whatever it may be, that's let's just say more tightly regulated than if it was a tech startup in San Francisco, right? Do you see that is a little bit of a barrier sometimes to adoption of these sort of tools? Or maybe it's like you're saying that TriMedics is actually, again, not to speak for them, but seem to be embracing some of these new tools and technologies much more than one might think.
I'll say in the healthcare industry, that is definitely a major concern with AI adoption, is this patient safety and security aspect. EPHI or protected health information is, in every facet, and it's in all considerations when you do training, even before technology existed, with paper records and making sure all of that's left down and the right people are accessing it. And it's definitely a concern that come to the forefront with AI development because it's, it's searching through all your data. And I also think that's why the AI is maybe a little bit slower, or technology development is a bit slower in the healthcare space, because we do have to keep that in mind, all of the security and safety aspects of making sure you're using the data appropriately or protecting the data appropriately.
Absolutely. Yep. People's lives are at stake, right? It's a little bit different than if you're building out some sort of a tool to help someone analyze all their personal photos and create patterns. I'm curious to dive a little bit more back into the more general marketing area or product marketing. You mentioned earlier about the different types of integrations and different types of data that you bring together under a single ecosystem in the CRM, and maybe you have some data elsewhere. What do you find is the most challenging piece of seeing data and trusting it? Do you have any issues with that sometimes? And how do you deal with situations where you're like, oh, I'm not sure if this is quite right?
Yes, I am very much a trust but verify kind of person in every facet of my life. And I also enjoy analyzing data. I think I have more analytical mind working on the product, upstream product marketing side. So there are a lot of times I see an output of data and it just seems odd to me or indirectly correlated. Like I know they've attended a bunch of things or this client just thinking like and weird NPS scores that come through, right? And I'm like, but we have conversations with this client, why is that happening? So actually digging into individual areas, performance areas, and reviewing the raw data is something I will go back and do to understand the why. It's, when you're dealing with data, it's not just the what and then you move on. It's understanding the why things are happening because there's no such thing as bad data. It is what it is. But understanding why it's happening.
Yeah. We're assuming, of course, that the foundations of the data collection platform, what it may be, are set up right. But I think you make a great point there, and that I was actually speaking to someone about this yesterday. Seeing data and working with data is great. And if we're talking more about people who are data engineers, data analysts, that's part of the architecture and architecting systems. But actually being able to look at data and saying, this doesn't look quite right. Or that something's off here. Really understanding the business or the nuts and bolts of the type of work you're doing, the campaigns you're doing, brings an extra layer to being able to uncover these issues or fix issues with data collection processes, whatever it may be. So I think there's something there for maybe younger marketers who they have a ton of different data coming in. You can't just look at it blindly and say, okay, this is right, this is right. Put a microscope onto that and say, does this feel right? And maybe you need to tweak a few things behind the scenes. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the technology side one more time here because we're talking about data. Might as well stay on it. I'm curious here, if you had a crystal ball and you could take a look at next year and separate it even from your current role, your company, I should say, and you could just design the perfect marketing stack out there. Could also be technology based or AI based. I'm curious to hear, we're talking about CRMs or CMSs or analytics tools, MarTech tools. What are your favorite tools out there, systems, platforms, and how would you architect that if money and budget was not an issue or time?
Oh yeah, if money and budget was not an issue, which we all know it is everywhere.
Always.
Yeah, I would definitely have, at least in my experience, I've seen what these very fancy CRMs can do for these large companies. And you said we're a small to medium sized company. And that's mostly where I've worked is you got to work with what you have. But I would love to have a CRM that in my most experience has been with Salesforce. And I've seen some of the tools. Where everything just comes together and you see this client profile and along the side, it's all the emails you've sent them and all the open rates and interactions they've had. And over here, I can see all the sales interactions when they've called them, when they've come by a trade show booth. And I know their contract expiration dates and where we are in the life cycle and what are the KPIs that we're serving, performance metrics. Are we saving them money? Are we in the world I'm in today, right? How is their equipment performing, uptime, downtime, repair service? And where are we in upselling, right? Have they been proposed? Is there an open opportunity? Just a very clear window to exactly what's going on. And then a way to synthesize the information. And in past roles, we've tried to do this, but never gotten it, right? Like, what is the magic recipe to influencing your customer, especially when in the healthcare industry, when we're dealing with B2B to another hospital or health system, you have tons of stakeholders that are involved in these deals. So there isn't one decision maker and there isn't one thing that convinces them. It is, these deals can take 2 years. Where are they in that buying cycle or user cycle? And how do we get them to the next step? That is my vision. There's just like a awesome dashboard with my customer profile on it.
I mean, that sounds amazing. Yeah. And these things are possible to do, as I'm sure you know, but a budget and time are always operative
What
pieces,
budget? I'm
right?
sure we can figure it out.
Yeah, well, we actually, not to toot our own horn too much, but we do things like this at Darwin too. Another thing I would add to that, and I think you even hit on this very well, is upselling and cross-selling opportunities. Again, just as to mention something, we actually have a service here as well where you can use AI empowered services to track behavior and compare it against other profiles and say, well, maybe you want to try to sell them with this date. There are tons of ways to do these things, but like you mentioned, it can be a bear. And I imagine even more complex with, again, the industry you're in, and that you must have some sort of an internal system that can't speak anywhere externally. And you probably would want to compare patterns amongst different clients of yours to glean insights, and therefore it can maybe indicate what you should or should not do with another client. But there can't be too much cross contamination of names or industries things like that. So anything's possible. But yeah, that sounds amazing. I wish we had that too here at Darwin. I'm sure there are many people listening who would love to have that too. Fantastic. Well, very cool. I wanted to maybe shift gears a little bit here to something a little less positive, but not scary, because we all know in our experiences, in our careers, there are times that things don't go perfectly. I have plenty of experience, sad to say, not necessarily because of things I've done, but things other people have done, and sometimes things I've done where we make mistakes or things just go wrong. Things go bad. I can think of things like I've worked in a place before where we accidentally published a product live to a website that wasn't supposed to go live until next week, and it had a whole campaign behind it. These are bad things, but mistakes are unavoidable at times and problems are unavoidable. So I'm curious from your perspective, just to make maybe those younger marketers out there feel a little bit more okay when mistakes happen. Could you share a little bit about the worst campaign or system failure or whatever failure that might not even be attributable to you, but that's what you've experienced, you've gotten through, and you've grown from?
Yeah, absolutely. And thankfully, so far to date, my worst experiences or failures have been early in my career. So hopefully, others didn't judge me too harshly on this. But probably the one that stands out in my mind is a new product, my very first time doing a new product launch as a new graduate from undergrad and newly made product manager, and working with our R&D teams, development teams, regulatory teams to bring this product to market. And we would have weekly, bi-weekly project update meetings where we'd go through, what's happening with testing, where are we in, regulatory paperwork with the FDA, just everybody kind of giving a status update. And we were well underway in the marketing launch phase of sales materials. And we had an event coming up, a national sales meeting. And I had training sessions and I had all of their materials that they needed. But in one of our few weeks ahead of time, there was a weird thing that happened in the development that it was a very small issue that was creating a high fallout rate or scrap rate in the product being produced. But we think it's kind of a fluke. No big deal. We'll get through it and just push ahead. Well, anything on a small scale is big, right? On a big scale. So once we started to get into production quantities, the scrap rate was huge, and to the point where it was eating into the margins and it wasn't making sense to continue with this until we fixed the production side of it. And so the day before our launch, I had to pull all of the launch materials, and we were flying in 150 sales reps to do this. So sheer panic of what are we going to tell them, right? And it's something, when I look back, I now know if something comes up that close to a launch and it's a small problem, I need to even if we do get through it, say we do work it out, let my boss know, escalate this, draw awareness to it, because there's a good chance, like CYA, there's a good chance that it'll become an issue down the line. And it does impact your launch a lot of times, because the marketing launch phase, right, is the last thing that happens in the product development pathway. Anything that happens before it impacts it. And it's a highly visible action. So I certainly learned from that one.
I can imagine, yeah. But you made it through. right? And you're still
Yeah, we had to pull it a couple weeks later. We did end up figuring it out, and we did launch it, and it was a success. But definitely could have avoided some heartache there.
Yeah. But I think you make a good point there in the transparency with your boss, raising the flag sooner than you expect to maybe need to. These are always key, being honest about things, right? I'll share a little quick story on my end. Something that I did when I was young too, and I used to work for an organization in Capitol Hill in DC. We had a very important dinner for a lot of awardees at the Department of State's diplomatic reception rooms, and I was responsible for all the collateral and things like that. And I realized when we get our printed menus about a week before the event, there's a typo that I should have caught, and it cannot go like that. I had to go to the boss right away and say, "Look, there's a mistake. We need to do this. We need to fast print a new version. It's going to cost us money." But I don't know what I could have done. Maybe I could have tried to pretend like it wasn't there. I didn't see it until the day of. There are many ways that people try to squeeze past mistakes. Honesty and maybe preparing ahead so you have some more lead time. Obviously, in that situation with yours, it's tricky because you're up to the ninth hour a lot of times, right? For these things, and that's just the way it is. But be honest, be transparent, and realize that this too shall pass. Is what I have to say to folks. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I also found that the majority of the bigger mistakes I had were earlier on in my career. So I think that there's evidence there that we all tend to grow a little bit and learn over time.
Yeah, the other one is if you're going to send out a mass email, put everybody in the BCC field.
Yes.
Everybody will do that at once, and someone will inevitably respond with something crazy to 300 people.
Yep. And then everybody's going to be mad that, why are you sharing my email address with everyone else and all this other stuff? If it's an external email. Yeah. That's a good one to remember too. So tattoo that on the forehead, team. So last sort of question I want to ask you here before we do sign off is our hill to die on is what we call this. I'm curious, what is your most unpopular marketing opinion?
Yeah. And I probably, I don't know if this is unpopular with marketing, maybe outside of this to the organization is, unfortunately, marketing alone cannot make a product a success or a solution a success. Marketing starts way earlier than you building a website, doing lead generation, sending email, campaigns, doing social media campaigns. It starts in the product conception phase of you've got to make sure from a strategic marketing standpoint, you're developing something that has a true need. And it's the right one, right? You also know what your competitors are up to as far as, are they going to beat you to market? Are they developing something that's going to eliminate this problem? So a good example in medical device or medical technologies is pharmaceutical companies creating a drug that cures a disease that you are creating a device to treat. If the disease doesn't exist anymore, you just, there's no market. So knowing what's going on there before you ever get to the downstream marketing, I think it's more important, right? It's more important than the branding. It's more important than the lead gen and how many people you get into the funnel is making sure you have the right product and solution mix for the market.
Makes perfect sense. And I think that that's great evidence to the contrary of the classic move fast and break things adage. I mean, everything, yes, there are benefits to doing things in many different ways, but nothing is a fast and general rule for everything. And so, yes, it's important to move fast a lot of times, but you got to think ahead. You got to have some forethought there, really do your research, or else a lot of work's going to be wasted. So I love that. I love that perspective. And so, and by the way, some of this learned from experience, right? It's not just, you've seen this, I'm sure, before. So, a lot of folks who are young, they want to move fast. They just want to do everything. They want to get every tool they can get to track or manage whatever sort of outreach they have under the sun. Try to be a little more strategic and have a little more forethought.
Yeah. And I think you can do that, especially in technology companies, right? You can move very fast. And there is some benefit, or a lot of benefit, right, to being first to doing something. But as you're trying to, as an organization, develop credibility and trust with your customers, you really have to balance that speed and innovation with quality product. And that's a delicate line.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. You can have all the fluff behind the scenes and we're great, but if you don't have a product that actually serves value, if you don't have something interesting, different, remarkable, or valuable, or the cheapest or best, whatever it is, you gotta You got to find that angle right from a product perspective. Alicia Burns, Director of Product Marketing here at TriMedics. It's really been a pleasure to have you here today. I'm just curious, do you have any parting words before we sign off?
Yeah, I think it's a saying that it's not new, but came from a leader of mine. And I always keep in my thought as I'm trying to execute and get things done through the day is don't let perfection get in the way of progress, especially when developing value propositions, product messaging, social media campaigns. Always, you can do A/B testing just to get something out there and see how the market reacts and do something and stay in front of your customers. And you can always come back and revise it or try something new later.
Absolutely. Take that and run with that, everyone. I couldn't agree more. You got to get moving. You're never going to be perfect. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. You could do an A, B, C, D, E, F test and you can still improve, right? Alicia, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here today with me.
Yes, thank you.
Of course. And you've been listening to What Keeps Marketers Up at Night, brought to you by Darwin, the team that helps CMOs finally trust our data and sleep a little better. Subscribe, share, and get some rest. You've earned it.